How cool was that game? It was so good. I actually will say this: I'm really bummed about how great the production value of that last game was because it is going to totally ruin your expectations for the rest of the content that we've produced for Zoom for the rest of the weekend. But what an incredible fun time with some really fun players, many of whom we have right here live on Twitch to talk to you right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Legion M's David Baxter to introduce some of the panelists and players from the last game, the Book of Knowledge, and take it away, David. Who do we have here?
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I am David Baxter, VP of Development for Legion M, and we're very excited to be at Comic-Con at home and on Discord with CCI Gaming. So thank you guys for making this all possible. But the big thank you goes to Lost Odyssey Games for coming up with and putting on one of the most incredibly well-produced Dungeons and Dragons games there has ever been, the Book of Knowledge, which of course was entirely dependent upon one person who we can't see. She's in stealth mode. Deborah Ann Woll, dungeon master extraordinaire, actor, writer. You may have seen her in True Blood or on Daredevil, but she brings all of her storytelling skills to the table. And if you just watched the game, you saw that in action. Also with us are some of the players from the game. Luke Gygax, who you may know, is the son of Gary Gygax and is a game designer himself and a member of our National Guard. Thank you for your service during these trying times. And he played Vesnus in the Book of Knowledge. We also have Xander Jeanneret.
Yes.
He's a part of half of the Library Bards.
Ta-da.
Who played Ricky Huckster, whose name was absolutely appropriate. And to add some, gravitas to the entire, game, we had TJ Storm, who played Malgre. And we also have the two geniuses behind Lost Odyssey, Rob Miller and Douglisio DiMuccio. Thank you guys, for everybody for joining us for this. I was in the audience when this went on, and this was of course pre-pandemic, and I cannot tell you, there is an energy that is created when you have the audience reacting to all the players doing their thing, that I had never experienced before. It's just not the same as watching it on watching on YouTube. But I wanted to start this out with an origin story. Robin Douglisio, could you give us a little bit of background of where the idea came from for Book of Knowledge? Because it really seems like this was a group effort that evolved based on your outreach to some of these players and DMs and so forth.
Yeah, sure. If you want, Rob, do you want me to kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
Because we're Rob and myself are we're one brain. We just share two bodies. We had seen a couple live shows before, D&D live shows, and they were set in theater spaces, and we honestly just wanted to see something that utilized the theater space in a more interactive way between. And I think we can see Deb now, which is amazing.
Yay!
Yeah.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi. All right.
We are connected.
Okay.
But it was sort of an attempt to create a higher form of interaction, at least using a theater setting, and approaching it like we would doing something like a theater show. I mean, D&D is so close to something like experimental theater already. And we could not have found a better dungeon master than Deborah. I will sing this to the end of my days. There's a few harder workers out there, but also her approach to the story is something that really got us inspired, because we wanted to take from what our DM wanted to do and pull that into the theater space as much as possible. And then I don't know, Deb, if you wanted to talk about kind of once we had reached out to you, like any inspirations that you had first thought when you knew we were doing it in like a theater setting.
Cool. Oh,
Sorry, there's an outage.
okay. Sorry. Yes, as you heard my husband say there's an outage in our area, internet outage. So I'm on my cell phone. I'm plugged in because my battery is low. I'm called in. I'm in my. You can see there's the dog.
And she's frozen.
No, I'm not. Am I back?
We can hear your voice. Yes,
okay.
you're.
Well,
it's like a early 1900s sort of choppy movement.
All right. Well, like if you hear my voice, we'll stick with it. But if you can't, then maybe I should go back to dial-in. I don't know.
No, this is good. We can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then
yes.
Go
ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, how did they approach you? In other words, how did the connection happen that you even heard about this game?
Well, Douglisio and Rob might have to remind me, but I think maybe it came through either Joe Manganiello or Matt Miller, somebody like that had worked with them before and couldn't do this one or something like that, but recommended me. I don't remember exactly, but maybe something like that.
It was Matt.
And then
definitely Matt.
Matt Lillard.
It was Lillard.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. That makes sense. So he knew you guys, and then recommended me to do the run the show. So yeah, I think they knew it was going to be the book of knowledge. So they wanted to incorporate that. And then Douglisio had kind of a general arc he was interested in, but was very open, and we ended up kind of jumping off of that point into I was reading a lot of fairy tales at that time. I don't really know why. I had this idea that wouldn't it be fun to get sucked into a book and have to live in the world of a story, and what would that mean? What happens before the story starts and after the story ends? And then it just kind of it grew into this sort of larger concept that seemed to work with the idea of the book, that the book is holding all of these stories from all of the different people that have carried it throughout their lives.
How long, when you guys were working on this, I mean, how much time did it take to build out this whole adventure? Because I mean, they gave you the book, but then you had to go and make it all come together.
Yeah, I mean, they approached me, I think, this summer, right around now, I think, and the show was in November. So we had a good 4 or 5 months. I was writing for the first 2 months, then we got an introduction for the second 2 months, and it was a lot of back and forth and take, and they would say, oh, well, we have the capability to do this with our sets or with our light, and I would go, great. And as I'm writing, I'm thinking about places where we could utilize that. So yeah, it was, we kind of built it as we knew what we were capable of doing.
Yeah, and I think I remember the very specific email, Deborah, where when you first came up with the Tail Weaver, I think that was when your whole story got set. Because I think that was if there was a hook point that excited you, I think it was figuring out the Tail Weaver.
Yeah.
I remember you saying something like, "Okay, I think I know how to frame all of this now. Like I know who they're going to be encountering. I know what she does."
Yeah.
So the Tail Weaver was, I think, kind of the jumping off point.
Well, she's fun. I think I had some idea that we so easily trust NPCs when we play Dungeons and Dragons, because we trust our DMs to just have sort of created these helpful characters to help us through our path, and I liked that she was this sort of kindly librarian, very easy to trust kind of type in that way. And then kind of flipping that on its head and saying, stories are enticing and tempting, and we can always twist them if we want to.
Mm-hmm. Deborah, did you create these characters, or did you go to these players like TJ and Luke and Xander and have them, create something
No, I
based
take
on it.
I take no credit for their amazing characters. We just said, like I created the story. I think I said something to them like, this isn't your traditional Sword Coast world, so whatever you want to create is fine by me. We're in a more fairy tale type world, if that inspires you. And they all created whatever they wanted to play.
Well, we got a question from Alahoe 808 for TJ, and was there an inspiration for your character? How did that come about? I mean, I still have to say, your entrance is one of the great entrances of all time in any Dungeons and Dragons game.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you. No, first we had such an amazing team and amazing DM that you have to step up to the plate to rise to that particular occasion. For me, making that particular character, it sounds ridiculous, but I have on my phone, I have dictionary.com, and it gives me the word of the day. Every day, a word of the day pops up. And that day was a word called maugre. It's Maugre. And the old French, it comes from French, and in French, it's malgré, and it literally means in spite of. And I was like, maugre. I've never even heard of that word. I've never even heard of it.
It's amazing.
But I was like,
I love you.
Malgré. That's kind of cool. So I made a character that was in spite of, and basically you don't know what he is, but underneath that mask, he's a race, and he's supposed to act a very particular way, but he acts exactly opposite because of his history. And because of his history, he acts in spite of what his race is perceived as. He acts in a different way, and that's kind of the character that I built. And then I kind of decided class and all of that, but I just felt that I really needed to step up for this, and then I went shopping. So yeah,
it just was a really, really compelling character. Xander, you got to give us the origin story.
Yeah, well, Ricky Huckster comes from another project that Deborah and actually Matt Lillard and I worked on called Relics and Rarities. So it was a D&D show that was produced by Geek and Sundry, and it's fully realized sets and things like that, much like what Lost Odyssey did. And I'm just the luckiest person that I get to keep playing these things. But Ricky was a favorite character of mine, and especially being able to take the druid trope and kind of turn it on its head of like, what if I made a greedy little like peddler of druidic potions and things like that. So Ricky, I got to level him up to level 8, so that's always fun to see your characters kind of at a higher level and what they can do. So it was a whole new challenge.
Sure. Luke, now your character was integral to the story, and you came in a little bit later. Did you have discussions with Deborah just sort of about how to play that, or?
Yes, there was a few discussions with her, but she played it pretty close to the vest. She wasn't reading me in too far into this plotline. She's like, here's a couple of things. When this is when you're going to enter in and just say, look out, and this is what you got to do. Then play it through, and then right when you meet Gehanna, you need to stand up and say, sister, something along those lines, and recognize her, or it's you, and that sort of thing. But the way I envisioned the character then is I've been stuck in the story. That's my sister, and I realized she was, we created the book of stories, and we're gathering these fables, but I realized that she was soaking in the souls of the heroes in the stories and kind of drinking them in. And adding power to herself, in some sort of megalomaniac way. And so I had scolded her for that and said it was wrong, and she trapped me in the book. So I've been stuck there forever. And I kind of thought of Robin Williams' character in Jumanji is kind of, how I approached this thing, is I was stuck in there forever. So I was a little wacky. I didn't necessarily always make sense. I was a little paranoid. I was jumping around, and of course that made like Matt Lillard and Kate Welch especially jumpy, I think. Which was,
I was going to say, there's a whole Matt Lillard meme now of jumping in the water that we can discuss at length.
I wish he was here.
But well, he's on vacation, and everybody deserves a vacation.
Now,
But
in,
there
in
was
the
an
middle of
interesting
a nap,
question.
he just he shouted out "crit" at someone.
But Luke, I wanted to ask you one further question. We got a question from Shark Can 24, and here's the question: has professional actors playing in and running D&D games helped the hobby or hindered it by raising people's expectations of what a good game should be?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think that there's different ways of looking at this. Doing streaming is more of a there's an entertainment portion of the story. So you're not just straight sitting at a table like you might at your home game or at a game where your convention, and really it's about the people at the table, very insular. This is a performance for others, so it's a different animal. So you are showing people how to play, but there's also an entertainment, external entertainment versus internally focused entertainment value to it. So it is different. I think with the high production values and all this sort of thing, it could set maybe high expectations for someone. But I have to say the game and accessories have progressed so much that there are amazing tools at your fingertips. I don't know. There's some great sound effects software out there, like Sirenscape. I mean, those guys. It's an amazing product, and it's almost like having a theater sound, like a Foley artist working background for you. So it's pretty amazing stuff. So you can do some of those values at home with just a little bit of work. So maybe it's increasing your home game, maybe it's upping your game at home.
Yeah, I think if I could just interject really quickly,
Please, everybody, this should be to everybody. I'd love to get everybody's opinion. It's a great question.
I think like many things, Dungeons and Dragons exists on a really interesting spectrum. Like I said earlier, we likened it to something like experimental theater, and we wanted to bring sort of the production around like a live show up towards almost like what you would see with a stage play. But that is facilitated by the adaptability of Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, I've played in Dungeons and Dragons games that the DM is using the rules system just as a starting point. I mean, you can do so much with the game, and it depends on your play style and who you're playing with. But I think it just, regardless of who's playing, I think it just goes to show the adaptability of the game, and that any table you ever sit down at is most likely going to be completely different from the last. That's what makes it like such a unique experience every time you sit down.
It's true, but there's a distinct difference when you're dealing with people who have a great deal of comfortability improvising. I mean, by having actors, and Deborah, it really felt like a theater of the mind, because you would sometimes replay actions and describe how things went after you did the dice rolls. And that led, at least for me, it was sort of a level of being enveloped in this that I don't usually get. But that was, contributed by, people like Kate Welch and Matt Lillard, being able, and Satine, is incredible every time.
Yeah, she was great.
And what's interesting is that many of the players are also dungeon masters. In fact, I think every single one of them was.
At some point, yeah.
I mean, did they throw you for a loop? Did you feel like you had to kind of turn things in a different way? Did Luke know his sister was going to become this giant spider?
No, that he didn't know.
I love that. That's great.
So there's a lot of things I'd like to answer that came up. I mean, we'll go from first off with Luke. So I told him that he and his sister had this disagreement, that she trapped him in the book, that he'd been there for millennia, a few weeks, he doesn't know, because time just keeps, but that he's been traveling from story to story. And then we set up a couple of key moments. I was literally like, there's 2 cues that are important for us to tell this story. And I think that goes back to this point about this being entertainment, like an entertainment version of D&D, because my home games are I like to let the players guide a lot more. I might have created, my whole thing is I'll create 3 different paths you get to pick which path, and then therefore you have freedom within sort of some boundaries so that I'm not totally thrown off guard. But in these kinds of games, you have to kind of railroad a bit more just to make sure that there is an arc, because a short story like this, you do want a rising action, a climax, and a conclusion. So we do have to manipulate a little bit. Again, I'm trying to keep things as sort of clear for Luke to play however he wants to, outside of here are your 2 cues and here's your backstory. So hopefully that combines too. But one thing that was really important to me, knowing that we were going to have a ton of production value for this show, I wanted that opening to be only theater of the mind. So I very consciously set a good 5 minutes of storytelling in front of the curtain, just me and the audience saying, hey, look, with nothing except your imagination, we can play this game. You don't even have to have dice. I'm just going to tell you a story and you're going to imagine yourself in it. Because that to me is the heart of Dungeons and Dragons. And that's what I would love to sort of inspire people to do at home, is whether you have lights or sound or props or anything, it doesn't matter. If you can be immersive in your descriptions, then you're playing at the highest level possible. So I wanted to sort of show both sides of that spectrum, with a little bit at the beginning there.
Well, I think you really did. By the way, we got a more of a statement from S.L. Westerfield, Vegas Vamp. It says, "Can you tell Deborah that she's inspired me for years in the industry?" Exclamation point.
That's so sweet. Thank you very much.
So but it's interesting. Everybody here, everybody on this Zoom is a storyteller, and that was clearly the focus, throughout this game. I just want to know, like, how the umbrella gag came in, TJ. It was just
literally, how did you get that past security?
Yeah.
What was going on there?
No one.
The audience went crazy for that. That was.
I just spent 2 days in Chinatown. I'm not even joking. I wanted to put a costume. I almost never cosplay because it's literally my job to cosplay half the time. And so
as Godzilla or Darth Vader,
or whatever. But the opportunity to get to play this cool samurai type of character, I was like, okay, I got to do something. And then as soon as I started seeing all the cool stuff, I couldn't stop. So I just walked. I walked all the way around Little Tokyo twice. Then I went over the bridge in downtown Los Angeles to Chinatown, and I walked around there. And I just kept discovering pieces. And I found a katana, a samurai sword. But when I picked it up, it was super light. And I was like, what is this? And the lady's like, umbrella. Umbrella. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So, and I actually put on one of the hats. It's a bigger hat than this. This is the smaller one, but the one that I had out there was bigger. I put it on my head, but it's very shallow here. And I was like, this is really cool. And I looked down to see the rest of my outfit, and it fell off my head. So I tried to capture it, but the loop went around my arm and went punk, and it was like a shield all of a sudden. It was like, oh.
Very cool.
So I just started to create as I was running around, and I found more and more stuff. And I even found it was a Chinese flute. And man, I was in the store. The lady was getting mad at me because I was like, and I couldn't make it work. But I was going to try so hard. I tried, but I couldn't play it. I didn't know how to play it right.
Well, that's for the sequel, right?
Yes.
Hey, Lost Odyssey, guys. This is the sequel.
Wish we got to film the making of. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is a question for all of the players. Was it hard to stay in character, or is that, because you're doing two things. You're being strategic. You're trying to figure out kind of the puzzle of the world that you're in. You're rolling dice to survive, and on top of that, you're trying to maintain a certain level of character. And it's funny because I watched your reaction. Sometimes the audience, like when the Tail Weaver transformed, there was an audible gasp from the audience and you guys too. I mean, it was like, so I'm wondering, does it become second nature, or is that just something?
I can answer that a little bit. I think that both Douglisio and Luke touched on this a little bit, but it is sort of, on one hand, like this actor's nightmare of you have to put on this show and you literally do not know your lines because there are none. So,
welcome to the theater. There's no script.
Yeah. So basically get out there, roll some dice, and hope for the best. But, I think that it comes down to both Deborah's storytelling and this immersive environment that you had set for us, that it was really easy to slip into being the characters. I think we actually had a problem of maybe we were too focused on some of the granular stuff that like, oh, maybe we should have just kept going, but whatever. But you really do get caught into it, and you want to be the one that's useful or figure out the puzzle, because there's something special about playing with other like sort of high level players, that you all can joke and you have this base level of understanding, that there's this even like third layer of like, I just want to make Matthew Lillard laugh, or I want to have the back and forth with Kate Welch no matter what. And TJ, I got to give you props, because Malgray stole the show with how funny you were. It's just all the time. The one-liners are so great.
Yeah.
So I just kind of rambled a bit there, but whatever.
But it's true. What I noticed is that, and I think Deborah Ann had to kind of pull everybody together near the end, is that you lose a sense of time. You're really not aware that this is a 3-hour show and it's got to end sometime, or these people will never leave. And, the final battle was incredibly epic. I mean,
I'm gonna pause you there, because my rolls in that final battle were so poor.
Yeah.
This thing to like this epic conclusion of this terrifying giant spider, and I scaled it up. Like, there isn't a spider that is that big in D&D. Like, I was like, no, make it bigger and scarier and more HP. Like, I went all the way with it, and then my rolls were so bad. I think I rolled like 2 1s that I was like, oh man, this is going to be too easy. And again, like, and your home game, it would be fine and you'd make a joke of it. But in an entertainment thing, I felt all this pressure to have that last battle be really, epically, tough, in that way. But in the end, you just have to kind of shake your head and have a good laugh and love the fact that this game is that fluid. And maybe that's the fun of it, like her arrogance got her in trouble. She thought she was this all-powerful, incredible being, and then she just fell over and rolled on her back, and they destroyed her.
Well, she should never have said that they were going to be her playthings. I mean, clearly that
go.
really teed off
jinxed
everybody.
Herself. Yeah.
But, so Xander, infestation.
Yeah.
Infestation.
I know.
To defeat a spider?
I know, and I get flack for that because it is a lower level spell. But going back to this sort of entertainment thing, with Ricky especially, I love narrating how he has his spells on them and sort of how they manifest. So one of my goals, especially with the one-shot, is to show spells that I haven't on camera yet. And infestation just sort of jumped out as one. I was like, I have a fun idea for this, and I think it worked fine. So
it worked fine because Deborah rolled really badly.
And sometimes that's all that it takes.
That's all it takes.
A little bit of luck.
Yeah.
Well, and it does. It changes things, and as a DM, you have to kind of figure out how to deal with the fact that your big bads are just sort of not so bad.
Yeah,
they're people too.
They're vulnerable, and that, again, that's a fantastic thing. You want your bad guys to be vulnerable. This was more vulnerable than I was planning. But in the end, I do think that was interesting that, like, in a way, her stories were more powerful than she was, which is kind of the point of the thing we were telling anyways. So I don't know, it kind of worked out. It was better for her to trap them, because in the end, she's not as strong as she thinks she is. So yeah, it worked out.
Those farm animals. Oh my God. So frustrated.
Really
I was frustrated by the farm animals in the audience. I was like, how do you stop these things? And and then of course we should
for them.
Well, we should bring up Lillard and Beetle, because it just when he said he was jumping off the boat, I was like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen to this game? And of course, he couldn't get out for the longest time.
Yeah, there were elements of like of the shenanigans of a home game for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, even it wasn't just the tail weaver. I've narratively likened it to something that must be going through his head behind that mask. But TJ, you had some, for as incredible as Malgray is, you had some not wonderful roles as well.
I was gonna say, during the fight with the spider, I was like, oh yeah, now I get to unload it. And I went bananas, and I think I missed almost every single slice. And those rolls were so bad that I forgot that I had advantage. I had advantage on all those rolls, and I completely forgot. So it went to the next round, and I was like, oh. And then I was going to action surge, totally forgot all of that.
Yep.
And
as soon as it gets around to your turn, like you just black out, and you're like, "What?"
Did for the actual stories? Did you, Douglisio and Deb and Rob? Did you discuss those in advance? I mean, because you obviously had that beautiful kind of animation and all of that artwork done to introduce these games.
Well, all credit for the story goes to Deb. We had an idea for the players passing through different worlds. Something from the very beginning that we knew we wanted to do in the theater setting was have them go into different settings, because we knew we could shift elements of the stage and the backdrops to kind of show that. But when Deborah made it about the story worlds within the Book of Knowledge that they'd be going to, everything was built off of the stories that she had written that they would be traveling to. From there, we found some incredible artists to do the work that you saw on stage. And the focus there, again, Xander touched on this earlier. I feel like I'm just repeating other people's answers. But it was to allow, how to say this without too many words. It was to, if you take as many responsibilities, I think, away from the players as possible, if you give them an environment and you give them all these different elements of immersion, I think it becomes a little bit easier for them to fall into their characters. So with the same way that we had such an attention to the story worlds that they were traveling into, really, as much as that was for the audience, that was for the players too. We wanted them to feel incredibly immersed by what was around them.
Well, there were so many layers to this. I mean, there was sound, there was environment, there were the costumes, there was the paintings, and then you guys even like busted out on the 3D environment for the big game out in front. I mean, so
Dwarven Forge, yeah.
I mean,
smells, they were so realistic.
Well, that was probably from us audience, from the sweat generated. We were all rooting for you, during this time. I got a question from Safflower Rabbit. Deborah, what inspires you when coming up with new campaigns, settings, or characters?
I mean, for me, I tend to think of my childhood. I tend to think of things that were fun and creepy and cool. There's a writing exercise that I learned that I really liked. It's called a literary scratch test. And the idea is that you think of it'll say like, think of 5 things that scare you. Think of 5 things that gross you out. Think of 5 sounds or sensations, or think of 5 things that break your heart. So you write all these things down, and if in just thinking about them, they make you respond in some way. Think of things that bring you great joy. So I'll do things like that, and it might be something as simple as like the stairs down to the basement. Like all of us as kids have that kind of gut understanding of the fear of what that is. And I go, all right, well, how can I get that into a story? Because I know it'll be effective. So a lot of things will be like that. It'll be, what can I find that I know, lives in all of us, that's somewhat a universal feeling, and then sort of expand it into a larger adventure.
Deborah, can I just say that you're my hero?
Oh.
That's
Well,
amazing.
listen, you are everybody here is a dungeon master, and I would pose the same question to you all if they're when you approach stuff. I mean, Luke in particular, you grew up with your dad creating these campaigns and games. Your character Melf is part of the D&D. It's interwoven in it. What inspires you as you approach, taking on new games and campaigns?
Well, for me, I guess I based my campaign world that I use privately, my home games and stuff, on experiences that I had. So I think of things that I've experienced, and then I meld that into a fantasy realm. So I took my last deployment to Iraq, which was, gosh, like 10 years ago now. And it was very, it's very, it was like 129 degrees sometimes out there. If you were in body armor and stuff, it is miserable. And I was thinking like, man, how can I communicate this feeling to, in game? It's just something as granular and as, simple as environmental exhaustion, heat, the sun beating down on you, sort of things. How do you incorporate that in there? And then, for me, I had this amazing experience of playtesting so many original adventures, which are now trope things because that's what my dad created, a lot of them, and they became the tropes, right? But they were fresh. They were fresh,
Yeah.
right? And all these creatures, and you wouldn't just instantaneously that's a drow. Those guys can do X, Y, and Z, and that's a drider, and whatever the case may be. There's a description of a creature, and it's like, well, what is this? Well, it works against it, right? There was no book to read to get that. So that sense of wonderment, if you can restore those elements in your story, I think that's great. So make somebody feel something, immerse themselves, whether it's that, make them uncomfortable, talk about that heat. It's like, just the back of your throat is scorched, it's an oppressive heat bearing down on you, your sweat streaming in your eyes, there's sand blowing in your, whatever. It kind of gets you to feel, right? And then spring new, it could even be the same creature, right? Reskin it so they can't recognize it, and they get that sense of wonderment and that little zinger power that they aren't expecting, and that catches them from the side and keeps them on their toes. I think those are important elements for me.
That's great.
To piggyback off of that too a little bit, this is also a great reason to bring new players to your table, because you get to experience, I love nothing more than to watch a new player's mind sort of get into it and then find the solution that I would never in a million years come up with. Especially now, if you're experiencing like some sort of quarantine or something like that, playing with family members, it's an incredible experience, and you never know what they're going to come up with. It's so much fun.
I want to spring off of that to Rob Douglisio, because you essentially did that when you pulled together all of the Game of Thrones actors to come together for your charity game.
Yeah,
many of those would never played, right?
Yeah, with D&D Live, we helped organize some of the games that they held this year, and one of them was the Cast of Thrones. Rob, you can correct me here if I'm wrong. Obviously, there was none of them had played previously, correct?
Yeah, none of them. Hodor, Christian had.
Yeah, well, he played Warcraft.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, he was a big Warcraft fan.
Yeah,
but
and
aside from that,
there was a fandom around like RPG gaming, but they hadn't sat down to play D&D before. And what I was delighted by, if people haven't seen that game yet, it's hilarious. I mean, it is absolutely against every character type that audiences know them for, which is what I so badly wanted to see. Their dynamic together is absolutely incredible. And
it's also just really, it's so honest. Like you see them kind of figuring out what the game is as it's all happening.
Yeah, like kids after school. It's amazing. And Luke, before I forget, I wanted to say, I think you, when you just brought up the idea of approaching the game as you want people to feel something, I think you've hit on what everybody here has accidentally committed their entire life to. So that's a pretty powerful statement, But yeah, if you haven't got a chance to watch it yet, go check out some of the games from Live. There's some incredible games from Live this year.
Yeah, no, I'm. It was it's interesting. So this is a general question to everybody. We're living through a historic pandemic. Nothing like this has happened for 100 years. And yet Dungeons and Dragons is thriving, if anything. I would even sort of say that for many people, Dungeons and Dragons is therapy, is a way to kind of deal with something that nobody's ever dealt with before. And I wanted to get, your thoughts on that. TJ, what is, have you kept the game going during all of this? I mean, I loved always going over to your place and getting everybody together, but you can't get everybody together. So what do you do?
Absolutely. We I run 3 home games a week, and there are 3 different groups of people. They all exist in the same universe, but we always showed up in my place and ate lots of junk food and recapped the week's news and argued with each other about whatever, and then we started to play. And even no matter what we thought or how we disagreed, and I mean, we disagree on a lot of different things because we have all kinds of different people, but then we were all part of the same world, all part of the same team for the most part. And those characters would do their thing and we'd be friends, just playing the game. And that's what it's about. Now we do that online. Thanks to Zoom and the internet and the technology that we have, I don't think we could have done this 20 years ago via AOL. I mean, we did text-based, but it was painful. It was really, really painful. But this is amazing. We're in an amazing time. I think every time says that because they've got what they've got, but we've got this, and we've got this now, and this is how we're using it, and we get to play and tell stories and share feelings, and that is the magic of Dungeons and Dragons, I think, and the magic of role-playing in general, is that you get to share. And I think that's what we're getting to do. And I'm really happy that I get to share with such wonderful people regularly. And they make me laugh until I got tears in my eyes, or I try to get them in a place where they're freaking out and paranoid about opening the next door. Whatever it is, we are all there together. And I'm like, this is cool. And then I still eat junk food, so that's still happening.
That's fabulous. What about for the rest of you? Are you all still playing, or have you taken a break?
I mean, just for me, I just want to say, like, D&D was created in a time where it was a troubled world. It was post, it was early 1970s, so we're just post the civil rights. We got post, actually at the end of the Vietnam War, so it was Vietnam War going on, stagflation. The U.S. was not necessarily, it wasn't the lone superpower. There was the mutual assured destruction. There was a concern about nuclear war. There's all these things going on. So Dungeons and Dragons was born at a time that was pretty stressful. And it's always provided a way for people to economically escape from reality for many, many hours at a time, and also serves to pull people together, make them feel like part of a community. And whether that's just your home game, just your team of people that are playing, as well as perhaps in a larger community if you attend conventions or go to your local gaming store and that sort of thing. So I think that is current, that applies today, because we're also in a little bit more difficult, troubled times.
Yeah, I'd like to jump off of that and
Please.
say similarly that, when things are hard and we all feel like, I think we all feel a little impotent. We all feel like there's nothing we can do to help. There's these little things. We're all such small cogs in such a larger system. And I end up feeling kind of hopeless a little bit. And there is something about telling stories about heroics, practicing standing up for what you think is right, even in something silly like our Book of Knowledge story, right? Like she was doing something wrong, and you all get to be heroes and say, hey, we're not going to stand for that. And it's a way to practice being brave and practice saying the things that you believe and taking action on them. And I like that idea. I think that's why it attracts us, and it makes me braver in my everyday life, even if it's that these small actions can have an impact, as long as we all do them a little bit.
I just got a chill. I got a chill when you said it. I immediately flashed back to the Two Towers when Sean Astin as Samwise Gamgee was talking about, kind of living through difficult times, and and it just absolutely. Thank you for saying that. It's really.
I also just wanted to sort of clarify, because I might save a game or two, that with D&D, it's therapeutic, but it is not therapy. And so it is a great way for people to escape and just remember that your dungeon master is playing as well. So it's a great space to, as long as everybody at the table has this understanding of like, hey, I'm going to unload as this character a little bit just to give you a warning. But I think it does create the safe space to explore these feelings as long as everyone is on the same page.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a community. I mean, it's representative of a community coming together. Like you're a miniature tribe for that time.
Yeah.
I think in
Well,
nearly every game that we've played together, Douglisio, our group has always like their characters have made decisions that match to like the core of who they are as the people playing them.
Yeah, and it can vary greatly too. I mean, you can have people that are coming in to make decisions that are the furthest thing from them.
Or so it even seems.
Like, yeah. And I yeah, it's well put. But I agree 100% with what you said, Xander, that like there's a clear distinction between the trust you have at a table with people versus using it to simply work through things. You know, that there's an element of trust, because you know you're all agreeing to be ridiculous, and in that agreement there's like freedom. I mean, that's, I think, the best way to put it.
Well, well said. I have a question from that Gamerture for the group. As a DM, what are your favorite types of puzzles, challenges that you like to throw at your players? Shall we start with Xander?
Yeah, so I have a problem where all of my big bosses are notoriously easy to take down. So I'm not a combat-based DM, but I love a murder mystery or like a story-based puzzle where you could put clues together. That's my favorite thing to do, and to not only experience, but to run for my players as well.
Deb?
Me? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I mean, I like all of them. Sometimes my favorite puzzles, though, are ones where I don't actually have the answer. Like you walk into a room, you can't see the other side, but there's a balance beam that stretches out into the darkness over a deep abyss. What do you do? And like, I don't know. I haven't figured it out. I don't know how you get across that. But it's so fun to see players problem solve. And come up with with their solution. And half the time if I just think it's cool, I'm like, great, it works, because that's the kind of play that I want to support and inspire, is the really kind of imaginative play. And I'd almost rather inspiration point you rather than have you roll a die on certain decisions and certain solutions,
Yeah. You're very rewarding, but I also love that you take a pleasure in the cruelty from time to time towards the players. I forget where you said it. I forget where you said it, but somewhere you said, "Well, yeah, that's sort of my mask." You know, like, "Oh, I'm nice. This will be a good time," and then put your players in dire situations.
Yeah, I seem very nice. I seem like I'm absolutely on your side, and I am. But I do think that part of the fun of a story is the peril, So you want people to feel like, man, how are we ever possibly going to get out of this? And then they come up with a solution, and it works. So that the fun of it is that it feels impossible, but then it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's interesting because I started playing D&D in the 70s, and in the first edition, it was incredibly difficult to even get to the next level, because you just died all the time. And with the 5th edition, there seem to be more ways to kind of, I don't know if I want to say that it lowers the stakes, but it certainly gives lots of different opportunities that we didn't have back in the old days. And so as DMs, you guys have to figure out the ways to create that rush of emotion, like, am I going to make it or am I not going to make it?
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, is it difficult, TJ? Like with you run 3 different games. How do you make your players nervous?
Making them nervous is easy, but because every DM knows that, you hear a sound.
And everyone freaks out.
They're like,
yeah.
but
Or if you smile.
yes,
Yeah.
smile.
Yeah.
They start talking
Exactly.
about, I'm just gonna go in there and I'm like, go on. But when I personally, there's every kind of puzzle, every kind of situation. I love them all because they're all different, and I think that's why I like to DM. To be honest, is because the way my brain works, I just love staying busy. My brain wants to be going and working on the next 4 problems while the PCs and my players are fixing something. But one of the favorite things that I've seen personally is I presented them with an environment. It was not the problem. It was just where the problem was happening. And to be short about it, to be quick, they were in a place called Mastica, which is basically South America. Cortez has just arrived, and he is whipping the South Americans. He's destroying them. He has horses, he has metal armor, he has stuff they've never seen. That's the background. Now, the problem is you guys got to get over to that temple. They're like, now, they're slaves. The South Americans peoples, the Incans, the Mayan equivalents, have been taken slave by the powerful Spaniards, and my players stopped, and they're like, we can't let this happen. And the other half of my players are like, dude, we can't. This is them. That's their problem. They got into an argument about an hour and a half long. They're like, we can't just leave it here. Helm is supposed to represent more. We can't let Helm. And I was like, they're just writing this themselves. I'm just.
This is amazing.
You're using. Awesome. It was awesome.
But by using, and this is something Luke was talking about, on his experience out in the Middle East, you can deal with issues in the world in your games, and the players have a choice, to impact that. It's almost like you can replay things.
Yes.
And that's a pretty spectacular thing to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
I also find it interesting that as DMs, they're there, they entertain the players, but they want to be entertained too. So there's a certain amount of pleasure that you get when players do things that you just, as Deborah was saying, when they come up with something that you would never have thought of and turn the game in a direction you never would have thought of, which happened to you there. How does that feel? I mean,
best.
Yeah,
it's the best. As soon when they do that, you're like, go, keep going, run. Like I love it.
Yeah, I generally, if my players start to guide the story in a direction that I didn't see coming, I mean, I feel it's my job to just add the color and plant life around the direction that they've taken it, because as a DM is the video game console of the movie that you're all in. It's communal storytelling. Like you're there just as much a part of it as you. I've been blown away by my players all the time. I mean, I'm not surprised anymore when I'm surprised, if that makes sense.
It does. Guys, I think we're quickly reaching the end of this. I mean, I could go on literally for hours. You're all such a pleasure to speak to. Book of Knowledge, I think was groundbreaking and a proof of concept for the way that gaming can go forward to entertain people, in a theater, in a big environment, whenever that is safe and possible to do. But
can I just say too, like on behalf of like the theater nerds everywhere, this is like the pinnacle. Like everything, all the boxes were checked. I was having the time of my life.
Oh, I'm very happy to hear it, man.
Yeah. Well, even like again, as a theater nerd, like to be downstairs in the dressing room
again,
like the whole experience was very satisfying on many levels.
Well, we're paying attention to the parameters of live shows and when that can happen again. Everyone will be downstairs backstage with craft again soon.
Well, it's great. Could everybody? I'd just like to go around the boxes and figure out for the audience where they can find out more information, whether it be the Book of Odyssey, Lost Odyssey, your social media stuff. We just start up at the top. Rob, where do you want to point people to?
Yeah, for Lost Odyssey websites, lostodysseyevents.com, and you can follow us, Lost Odyssey Live, on all socials.
Yeah, everything you'll find will be Lost Odyssey Live. Like he said, lostodysseyevents.com. That has our upcoming schedules for games. That has a lot of the stuff we did with D&D Live. That'll be the best place to look out for what we have upcoming. And we have some very exciting things upcoming, maybe with some people on screen right now.
Oh, that would be nice. I mean, come on, guys. You got to give me a little something. Is there a chance we might see this team reunite?
I have I can only answer in the affirmative. The parameters of how it will happen, I mean, there's a couple different Lost Odyssey events coming up, but we would like to reserve some info until we know when we can do another massive live show.
Awesome. Well, we all look forward to that. Xander.
Yeah. I stream on Twitch all over the place. I do other tabletop RPGs, D&D, Star Trek Adventures, all over the place. But my hub is on my Twitter, and it's at Xanderific with 2 R's and 1 F.
Xander, I also want to say that coming up right after this, we are going to be showing your music video, your D&D parody song. So
Yay!
on Twitch, and you will see you and Bonnie Gordon, the Library Bards, doing their thing.
Yeah,
TJ.
we're a nerd parody band, so yep.
Yeah. TJ, where are you? Are you there?
I'm
back.
He's good.
Tell us where we can find you.
You can find me at the Mind's Eye Tribe, mindseyetribe.com. You can find me on Instagram at Stormzeye with a Z, or on Twitter at TJStorm01, or on Facebook. I'm all over the place, but I'm usually at the Mind's Eye Tribe. So if you guys like to swing swords and shoot blasters and learn how to move like creatures and add that to your game, please come play.
Love it. And finally, with us for the last, Deborah Ann Woll.
Thank you. I'm easy to find. It's just my name anywhere. Deborah Ann Woll. Xander mentioned Relics and Rarities. We're so proud of that show, and I'm sure it's part of the reason why I got this gig, Book of Knowledge gig. So go find that. It's on YouTube, Relics and Rarities. And there's a lot of fun D&D stuff. I do game night with the Board Game Geek all the time, so we play fun games and stuff. And we should shoot it over to Luke too.
Oh, hey, thanks. Yeah. Who just forget that guy. I am Luke Gygax, and I can be found at Luke Gygax on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Luke Gygax, pretty easy. Not too many of us Gygaxes running around. And also, if you want to stay in touch with my gaming convention that I do in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, we're probably doing it more virtually this year, given again with all this sort of stuff going on. Yes, GaryCon. He's got his GaryCon dice. Yes, so GaryCon.com. We'll have some announcements coming up here soon. Fingers crossed that we can be safe and gather and roll dice in person. If not, we'll be doing this again and having fun. And I'm sure you'll see me on some streams in between now and then, because I just can't not game. So
yeah, no. In fact, there are two. We've got two panels coming up on Saturday. One is Growing Up Gygax. With Pat Kilborn, with members of the Gygax family at 10 a.m. And then the Tomb of Horrors, which Luke DM'd for a very interesting cast, which will be on after that, I think around 12 o'clock. So keep an eye out for all of these great games. I want to thank you all. This has been so much fun. Book of Knowledge, best time I've ever watched a D&D game. So thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to tell everybody else that coming up right after this to the audience, I was lucky enough for my birthday to be in a birthday game, first edition AD&D, that's by Stefan Picorni was the DM, and a lot of cool people, including Luke. And that's coming up after this. And I hope you enjoy that. And thanks again to Lost Odyssey, Deborah Ann Woll, TJ Storm, Xander, and Luke. You guys are great.
All right, see you later, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.